news that came out just within the last hour or so. Yair Lapid, Benny Gantz, these two main Netanyahu rivals merging together with a brand new party that has been officially named the Blue and White Party. It shakes up the election entirely. It will throw a wrench into the whole system. All of the polls that came before are going to be recalibrated here moving forward. And we're going to talk about the issues now in studio. With me is lawmaker Mossi. Mossi is a member of the Knesset with the Meretz Party. Also with me, Dr. Martin Sherman, right-wing activist, founder of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Both of you, thank you so much for being with us. Mossi, I want to start with you because of the deadline for mergers. Is Meretz in trouble, do you think, unless they merge with Labor? This Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid mega merger that's going to gobble up a lot of votes. Does Meretz need to merge, this party, your party?
I think Labor needs to merge. I think Meretz has no problem, and our public opinion shows, polls shows that. People who vote Meretz will not vote for Gantz and Lapid. People who vote Meretz want to see two-state solution, end of occupation. It's things that those two very distinguished leaders are not even talking about. So I don't think that there is any risk to Meretz, but yes, there is a risk to Labour Party. I think that they can make it, but of course, merging between Labour and Meretz will be the best option for today. Yeah. We have a few more hours to do that. Probably it's not going to happen.
All right, there's the last-minute negotiations that are still going on between Labor and Meretz. We'll see where it goes.
I'm not sure that there are negotiations. I don't know. But there was a phone call, but Labor leader Gabay is not interesting.
But do you think it's an issue of ego? Why wouldn't it happen? You mentioned Labor needs it. It could also help Meretz. These are left-wing parties with a different vision than the center and the right. Why won't it happen?
I think it's not ego. I think it's the reason that Mr. Gabay, his views vis-à-vis the Palestinians are closer to the right wing than to Meretz. And for him, it's very difficult to go with Meretz. But
you can break up after the elections. You can combine for the elections and break up afterwards.
Yeah, you're right. You should tell that to...
Which I suppose most of the parties who've joined up now will do anyway.
Probably. Well, you're right, but this is what you have to tell Gabay, not me, because I say, okay.
No, I'd be happy to see Meretz and Labour not get through the threshold. By the way, you introduced me as right-wing. I prefer the characterization as hawkish rather than...
Yeah. Okay. Mark, I want to ask you about your thoughts just on this brand new party. It has an official name now, the Blue and White Party, with Gantz and Lapid at the helm, but they also have two other chiefs of staff with them. What do you think?
Well, let me say two things. First of all, it's not really a party. It's an amalgam of opposites. It's not a party that's been formed by people who coalesce around some political credo or some philosophy of socio-economic activity or security point of view. It's people who've come together on a personal basis, either personal insult because they've been affronted by Netanyahu, or for personal animus against Netanyahu. It's not a party that's got any internal cohesiveness. There's no internal cohesiveness between someone like Tzvi Hauser, who comes with Bogi Ya'alon, and Nissan-Cohen. There's no cohesiveness between Bogi Ya'alon and Yael Gerber.
But are you worried that a party like this, with Gantz at the helm, from the little that we know specifically what he thinks about some of the issues that concerning the West Bank, concerning settlements, he uses the Gaza pullout. He talks about it in glowing terms. It was a model that worked. It may be used again.
Of course, this just shows his total misreading of the political situation. In fact, if you look at the appalling record of generals who've been prime minister, everyone's failed tremendously. Rabin brought armed militias within mortar range of our parliament and filled the streets with body parts and bloodshed. Ariel Sharon abandoned Gaza for Hamas, and he knew what was going to say because he wrote an article in 1992 predicting exactly what would happen if Israel leaves Gaza. And Barak abandoned South Lebanon to Hezbollah, which today has become a strategic threat. So I would be very, very, very wary of voting for generals.
I want to ask your thoughts on that, especially concerning the future of the West Bank, of the settlement enterprise, with someone like Gantz, who's going to have a major party, perhaps weighing the idea of pullouts.
First, I think generals in Israeli politics have a lot of success. I mean, Rabin came to power, Barak came to power.
And brought us Oslo. Barak came and brought us Hezbollah.
You say that already. Barak came to power and Sharon came to power.
And now we have Hamas in Gaza. Great. What could go wrong?
You have said that already. Barak pulled out from Lebanon and we got 18 years without. We had one summer, but 19 years without problems, comparing to 19 or 18 years earlier that more than 1,000 Israeli soldiers were killed. But Rabin has signed the peace agreement with Jordan, and yes, Oslo Accord, that even right-wing government in the last 20 years did not even think to cancel.
What do you think then should happen in the West Bank? If 500,000 Israelis living there, it's a major...
I think Gantz understands that for the security of Israel, for the benefit of Israel, we have to bring an end to the occupation and to leave the occupied territories with some swap of land.
But you're left of Gantz. You believe it's different. I mean, do you think that this is a project that should be...
Yeah, I've listened to his speech. He said that he supports United Jerusalem, which is a problem. He supports a settlements bloc. So, okay, what about the others? The others, from my understanding, why does he say that he is going to stay in settlements bloc? Because he is going to leave all the others. So, and he understands that this is what is good for Israel.
Basically, the plan that Gantz is talking about is a plan that was hatched or brewed in INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies near Tel Aviv. And basically what it is a scheme to turn the whole of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, into a giant South Lebanon. Because what they say is we will declare that across the security barrier, we will have no sovereign claims. But to avoid the mistakes of Gaza, we will leave the army deployed there and stop funding the settlements there. So what you're doing is in a stroke, you are converting the IDF from the Israeli Defense Force to the Israeli Occupation Force, because you're a force in a land which you declare that you've got no sovereign claims to. And eventually what will happen, you will have mounting pressure domestically because of casualties in the IDF, and you will have international pressure to pull out your foreign occupation force, which you say is a foreign occupation force, and eventually you will have unilateral withdrawal from Judea and Samaria without any agreement, without any security arrangements, just as there was in Gaza. But as opposed to Gaza, the territory that abuts the Trans-Israel Highway, it overlooks the Ben Gurion Airport, it overlooks Greater Tel Aviv. And if Mossi Raz thinks that this is increasing our security, I can only ask what he's smoking.
There's another issue I want to point out concerning this election, not only for the West Bank and the threat from Gaza, but also the status quo on the Temple Mount. What is the future of Jerusalem? Violence, of course, in recent days has been increasing. Clashes between police and Palestinian provocateurs. It's an issue that's still ongoing this week. Let's take a look back, and then we'll talk about this issue.
Clashes in the Holy City. Police say 19 Palestinians were arrested after Muslim worshippers tried to enter a section of the holy site that has been closed off for years.
On the Temple Mount in the heart of Jerusalem is that, unfortunately, a group of local residents, Israeli Arabs, tried to enter an area which has been closed off and locked off since 2003 by a court order. Police units immediately arrived at the scene and responded, and 4 arrests were made, and that was 2 nights ago. Unfortunately, yesterday as well, yesterday evening, there were also disturbances that took place, and this time the incident was slightly larger, and 19 suspects were arrested at the scene.
Worshippers say they were angered by the closure of the Gate of Mercy, which Israel sealed in 2003, saying the group managing the area had ties to the Islamic movement. And last week, the Muslim Waqf Religious Council entered the area illegally to hold prayers, sparking commotion. Jordan, which maintains control over the council managing the Muslim holy areas on site, condemned, quote, in the strongest possible terms, the Israeli police closure of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and demanded the reopening of the gate. And now the unrest continues. Emily Rose, i24 News.
Mossi, I want to ask, do you believe some of the provocation and the anger from the Palestinians of East Jerusalem is because of the growing power of the Jewish Power Party, these far-right extremists that are going to maybe be brought into power, who are vowing to expel them, have them be second-class citizens, and restore Jewish prayer to the Temple Mount?
They are already second-class citizens, but I want to correct you, they are not even citizens in Jerusalem, they are only residents. This week, this Sunday, I visited Abu Asab family that were actually deported from their house in the Muslim Quarter, where they used to live about 70 years since the Jordan occupation of East Jerusalem. And it happens house after house. I was yesterday with Sabah family in Sheikh Jarrah that are going to be deported from them house.
Are you surprised that I mean, what's your reaction? How you feel about Netanyahu's public embrace of some of these kahanists, these far-right politicians?
Netanyahu is not that far from these kahana people. Actually, this is his policy in the decade that he is prime minister. Policy of discrimination, policy of, again, not second-class citizens, second-class residents, since they are not even citizens.
Well, you say it's outrageous.
What do you say is outrageous? Because the Palestinians are not second-class citizens, they're the enemy. They're the enemy because they say they're the enemy. They say the enemy. Read.
Well, who's getting the family that Mossi visited?
Excuse me. It's a clash. It's a clash between two collectives which have incompatible founding narratives. Only one can emerge victorious, the other must be vanquished. There's no middle ground. Unless you think...
What does vanquish mean?
Vanquish means they must surrender, they must acknowledge that Israel is the sovereign.
Mossi, just get your reaction quickly to that sentiment.
My reaction is that when we won more than ever in the 6 Days War in 1967, it was the disaster that after that we got a lot of wars.
It was a military victory.
We got two wars, we got missiles,
and we didn't reap the political fruits precisely because you misread Arab sentiment. Precisely because you misread Arab sentiment.
Because you think in a European way and you don't understand the Middle East. There is no way.
Excuse me, you don't understand the Middle East because you think that if you give back Jerusalem, they'll stop charging.
He's a lawmaker in a certain
that doesn't matter.
I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born in the Middle East.
If we don't go Oslo, there'd be peace. Sharon told us if he withdrew from Gaza, there'd be peace.
He did not say that.
Oh, yes, he did.
He did not say. He did not say. No, you lie.
He said exactly that. Excuse me. But what Rabin said something else.
It's all reversible.
It's all reversible. It's all reversible. Yossi Beilin said. Yossi Beilin. Excuse me. Yossi Beilin said to Ma'ariv that the test of the Oslo agreements is a test of blood, and if the Palestinians cannot control terror, the army will have to go back there. Now you tell me if Oslo passed the test of blood.
We did not implement Oslo.
All right, we have to leave it here. I appreciate
violated Oslo Accords.
All right, this is an important debate that must be had and is being had, of course, in offices and cafeterias and water coolers around Israel and around the world. It will shape the future of this country and the election. I want to thank our guests for the discussion over the last 10 or so minutes. Lawmaker Mossi Raz with the Meretz Party, and also Dr. Martin Sherman with the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Both of you gentlemen, thank you so much for your discussion. Great to have you on the show.